In small towns, some nights are meant to be remembered forever, but others are cursed to never be forgotten. On a humid June evening in 2015, in the rural heart of Ohio, four high school friends walked into their future. It was supposed to be their night, the night they tossed caps into the air, hugged parents through tears, and whispered promises that the world would never pull them apart. By midnight, their laughter echoed across the wooden beams of a century-old barn lit with string lights and country music. By morning, their cars sat abandoned on a gravel road, their phones left behind like tombstones glowing in the dark. And the barn that had held their final party? Years later, it would burn, and in its ashes, secrets would finally speak. This is the story of four teenagers who vanished on graduation night, and the burned barn that revealed clues years later. Stay with me. Because this isn't just a case file. This is a descent into silence, rumors, and the unbearable grief of families who never stopped asking, what happened that night? The town of Riverton, Ohio wasn't the kind of place you'd expect to end up in headlines. A dot on the map. A farming community of fewer than 8,000 people. Churches, baseball fields, a single high school whose football team was the Friday night pride. Graduation week was a sacred ritual. Local diners served, "Congrats class of 2015" milkshakes. Pickup trucks lined the lots of Dairy Queen and Sonic. And for those who were seniors, the barn party was more than just tradition, it was the curtain call of childhood. The barn itself stood on the edge of Miller's farm, a weathered wooden structure with a sagging roof and hayloft that had held hundreds of kids over the decades. Parents knew about it, of course, but in Riverton, turning a blind eye was part of the unspoken deal. Kids drank, music blared, but it was safe. Or at least, it was supposed to be. That June night, nearly 200 students and locals showed up. Pickup headlights lit the gravel drive. Red Solo cups clinked. Music mixed with the sound of frogs from a nearby creek. The barn glowed like a lantern in the darkness. And somewhere inside, four best friends were laughing their last laughs together. They weren't the most popular kids in Riverton High, but they weren't outcasts either. They were the in-betweens, the kids who sat in the second row of class pictures, who worked part-time at the gas station or diner, who dreamed of bigger things than Riverton but weren't sure they'd ever leave. Hannah Price, 18, bright smile, hair always tied in a messy bun, planning to study nursing at a nearby community college. She was the glue of the group, always texting reminders, always the one driving. Tyler Cole, 18, lean frame, shaggy brown hair, obsessed with cars, planned to start at a mechanic's shop in July. He was loyal to a fault, the protector. Marissa Clark, 17, soft-spoken, dark curls, always sketching in notebooks. Her dream was art school, though her parents pushed for a real job. She carried quiet rebellion in her eyes. Ethan Ross, 18, the joker of the group. Blonde, easy smile, headed for Ohio State in the fall with a partial scholarship. He wore confidence like armor, but friends knew he feared being forgotten. Together, they were inseparable. They had taken the same bus route since elementary school, spent summers at Riverton Lake, and swore during freshman year that they would stick together until the end. June 6, 2015, was supposed to be that end, a night sealed with inside jokes and promises of reunions. But it became the night no one could explain. Witnesses later told police that Hannah drove them all in her dad's sedan to the Miller barn around 9:30 p.m. They parked near the fence, about 20 cars down from the entrance. Inside, they blended into the crowd. Friends saw Hannah dancing near the hay bales, Ethan tossing beanbags in a cornhole game, Marissa sketching caricatures in the corner, Tyler leaning against the wall talking cars with a classmate. Normal. So normal that no one thought to remember the details. By midnight, the party swelled. Music thundered through cheap speakers. A bonfire crackled in a metal drum outside the barn. A haze of beer, sweat, and laughter blurred everything into a golden memory for most. But around 12:30 a.m., something shifted. The four friends were last seen leaving together, stepping into the cool night air. Hannah clutched her keys. Ethan tossed his arm around Tyler's shoulders. Marissa held her sketchbook tight against her chest. They walked toward the gravel road. And then, nothing. No one saw them again. By sunrise, Hannah's car was still parked where she had left it. Inside, four phones glowing faintly, all lined up on the dashboard. The jar of dollars Hannah had been saving for gas money still in the glove compartment. Marissa's sketchbook on the seat. But the friends themselves had vanished. And here's where the story turns into a nightmare. Because when teenagers go missing, you expect panic. You expect frantic parents, search parties, sheriff's deputies scouring cornfields. And that all happened. But what no one expected was the silence. No footprints leading away. No tire tracks that didn't belong. No screams heard in the night. It was as if Riverton's four inseparables had been erased from existence between the barn and the gravel road. And for years, the town would whisper about what really happened, until fire reduced the old barn to ashes, and with it came clues no one was prepared to face. The morning after graduation should have been filled with hangovers and late breakfasts. Parents expected their kids to stumble in with crumpled gowns, smelling of bonfire smoke, promising they hadn't really been drinking. But when June Price walked into her daughter's room at 7 a.m., Hannah's bed was untouched. Her phone was gone. Her shoes were missing. At first, June smiled. She must have crashed at Marissa's. But when she called, no one answered. She tried Tyler's house. Ethan's. Each parent repeated the same line in voices that grew tighter with every call: no, they never came home. By 9 a.m., four families were in a panic. By 10 a.m., they had gathered at the sheriff's office, voices overlapping, photos shaking in their hands. And by 11 a.m., the word was out: 4 Riverton graduates were missing. Riverton's sheriff in 2015 was Sheriff Dale Whitmore, a man in his late 50s who had lived through the rise and fall of the town's factories, through decades of small-town disputes that rarely escalated beyond bar fights. He wasn't prepared for this. The department had only 8 deputies. No specialized search units. No big city forensic lab. But Whitmore knew one thing: in missing persons cases, the first 24 hours are everything. At noon, deputies drove to Miller's farm. The barn was silent, empty except for the smell of stale beer and cigarette butts scattered across dirt floors. Then they found it, Hannah's car, still parked along the gravel road. Inside, 4 phones glowed faintly, notifications piling up through the night. They were placed in a neat row across the dashboard, as if arranged deliberately. That detail would haunt investigators for years. By afternoon, the town erupted into a full-scale search. Volunteers formed human chains across cornfields. Drones were borrowed from local farmers to scan tree lines. Dogs sniffed through ditches and barns. Helicopters circled above Riverton Lake. But there was nothing. No blood, no clothes, no backpacks. The ground seemed too clean, too untouched. The last confirmed sighting remained the same: around 12:30 a.m., the 4 walking together toward the gravel road. Some kids swore they saw a dark pickup truck idling there. Others said they heard a scream near the creek. But when pressed, stories unraveled. No one could be sure. In small towns, rumors spread faster than facts. By the second night, whispers had already divided Riverton. Theory 1, runaways. Maybe the 4 had planned this: leave their phones behind, hitchhike out of Riverton, start fresh. But parents scoffed at that. None had packed bags. Marissa had left her sketchbook in the car. Hannah had $60 saved in a jar under her bed, untouched. Theory 2, foul play. Some pointed to outsiders. The barn was known to attract strangers from neighboring towns, older guys, drifters. Maybe someone lured them out. Theory 3, an accident. The creek near the barn was fast and swollen from recent rains. Could they have fallen in? But four at once? Unlikely. Theory 4, something darker. A handful whispered about Riverton's past, unsolved disappearances from decades ago, stories of the Miller farm carrying a curse. But police dismissed that as hysteria. If the sheriff's office was overwhelmed, the families were shattered. June Price sat outside the station, clutching Hannah's yearbook to her chest, whispering her daughter's name as if it might summon her back. Rick Cole, Tyler's father, a mechanic with oil-stained hands, begged deputies to let him search on his own. "I know these roads better than anyone," he insisted. The Clarks, Marissa's parents, printed flyers overnight, hundreds stapled to every pole in Riverton. The Ross family, Ethan's parents, went straight to the media, calling local news stations to cover the story. By day 2, Riverton wasn't just a quiet farm town anymore. It was a town on edge. Investigators catalogued everything they could. 4 phones left in the car. Hannah's car locked, keys gone. Marissa's sketchbook on the seat. No wallets, no IDs. No CCTV on rural roads. It was a puzzle with too few pieces. Sheriff Whitmore stood before cameras on June 8, saying the words no parent wanted to hear. "We have no reason to believe these young people left on their own. We are treating this as suspicious. We are asking for any information, no matter how small." The case had barely begun, and already it felt like a ghost story. 4 friends gone without a trace. A car left like a shrine. Phones glowing but silent. And Riverton, once a town where nothing happened, became a place where parents double-locked doors and kids whispered that maybe the barn was cursed. But the truth? The barn was only the beginning. Because years later, when flames consumed it, the ashes would reveal something no one expected. The summer of 2015 should have been filled with road trips and college dorm shopping. Instead, Riverton High's class of 2015 wore black ribbons at graduation reunions and avoided driving past the Miller farm. The barn, once a symbol of teenage tradition, sat quiet. Dust gathered on beer bottles left in corners. Red Solo cups faded in the sun. The laughter of graduation night seemed trapped between its wooden beams. Searches continued through July. Divers swept Riverton Lake. Cadaver dogs sniffed through cornfields again and again. Flyers were mailed statewide. But as August rolled into September, hope thinned like smoke in the air. By the 1-year mark, the case file was already growing cold. Leads dried up. Rumors became folklore. And the 4 names, Hannah, Tyler, Marissa, Ethan, became carved into Riverton's collective memory. Grief doesn't treat everyone the same. June Price, Hannah's mother, refused to change her daughter's room. She folded her laundry every week, left her bed neatly made, kept her cap and gown hanging on the closet door. To her, Hannah was just away, maybe at a party, maybe late from class, but never gone. Rick Cole, Tyler's father, spent nights driving country roads with a flashlight, pulling over at ditches, scanning fields as if his son might stumble out of the dark. His truck clocked thousands of miles. He never stopped searching. The Clarks, Marissa's parents, turned their grief into anger. The family always kept a tall ladder leaned against the house. But when George reached the spot, the ladder was gone. It wasn't misplaced, it was missing. He then sprinted to his trucks, parked in the yard. If he could start one, he could drive it close to the house and climb onto the roof. But when he turned the ignition, nothing happened. The second truck also failed. Both had worked perfectly the previous day. Panicking, George tried to draw water from the barrel to douse the flames. But the water was frozen solid by the winter cold. Every plan, every instinct, every fatherly attempt to save his children was met with failure, as if fate itself had intervened. Neighbors had gathered by now, drawn by the glow of the flames and the family's cries. But there was little anyone could do. The Fayetteville Fire Department, alarmed by phone calls, was notoriously slow to respond. That night, it was worse, no one answered the phone at the firehouse immediately. When the alarm finally reached Chief F.J. Morris, he claimed he had to call his men one by one, as there was no siren system. By the time they arrived, the Sodder home was nothing but embers. The entire blaze, from Jenny's first discovery to the collapse of the house, lasted less than 45 minutes. In less than an hour, half of the Sodder family had seemingly been erased. By dawn, the fire was out. Smoke drifted lazily into the winter sky. All that remained was the stone foundation, piles of ash, and blackened rubble. Neighbors comforted George and Jenny as they wept, but a gnawing question hung heavy in the freezing air. Where were the children? If 5 young lives had been consumed by fire, there should have been something left. Bones, teeth, fragments of clothing. But the ashes revealed nothing. Nothing at all. When Fire Chief Morris finally addressed the family, he delivered a conclusion that would define the case for decades. He told George and Jenny that the fire had burned so hot, so thoroughly. If you're hooked by this story, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and subscribe so you won't miss part 2.